Welcome back. It's been a while, hasn't it? Take a seat. Don't you just love the smell of a campfire burning? That wood crackling, the heat upon your skin, s'mores roasting. You did bring the s'mores, right? Fuck. You guys have one job. This is our comeback special after what the fuck? You know what? Fine. I'll let you off this one time. Just know next week, I expect a fucking feast. That's why I decided to take you guys out here. Let's have a change of scenery. As much as I love the previous backing track, it feels all too samey, you know? I'm feeling this woodland vibe a bit more. It's a bit more relaxed. We're out in the great wide open. A bit of freedom and just a little smidgen of eeriness. So take a seat around the fire, relax, take the weight off and listen to some of the scariest stories. Today I've been planning a new short series in which we go state by state all over the US, searching for the scariest real encounters from real people like you and me. Before we get into the stories though, let me remind you the merch store is open and active again, and that is thathauntedshowmerch.com. It's a new season. We have everything from thick winter hoodies to nice and chill summer tees, with more coming soon. The Patreon page is cancelled as I just simply can't keep up with all the demand for bonus episodes, etc. If you feel like you do want to support the show in any way, sharing it and leaving a review helps out tremendously. So if you have any time, it takes around 30 seconds and I would be incredibly appreciative. Wherever you listen to, whatever works. Apple Podcasts is the best for me personally, but whatever. If you want to support the show financially, we do have a Buy Me a Coffee page that will be linked in the show notes, and also a Cash App, now that I remember. I don't even know what that is, but I will find it and I will link it. Also remember to follow the social pages, which is That Haunted Show, all one word, pretty much everywhere. I want to get all you amazing listeners out there more involved with the show, so I'll be crediting anyone who's been around for a long time and helped out the show by leaving a review, repping our awesome merch, and just being an amazing human person. So, before this fire burns out, let's get into our first story, shall we? The first story is titled The Devil in the Bathroom, and it's coming out of Alabama. So today's stories are all coming out of Alabama. It's the first state in alphabetical order, and I just thought it's the easiest way of doing things. So this is by Ghost Scout 1001. I was 6 years old. My older sister was 9. The year was 1982. My mum and my dad went out somewhere that night and got us a babysitter. We lived in a very small 2-story bedroom apartment with a bathroom that was upstairs. Our babysitter was a teenage girl who lived 2 doors down. The babysitter was keeping us occupied, and I remember we were all colouring at the table. I had to go to the bathroom really bad, but I was scared to go upstairs alone. I don't remember ever being that scared in the house before that day. I asked my sister if she would come with me to the bathroom. She said no because she was colouring. I kept asking her, almost begging her, if she would come with me, but she kept saying no. Finally, the babysitter got sick of me asking, yelled at me, and told me to go to the bathroom by myself, because my sister did not want to go. I remember being so scared as I walked up those stairs alone. Before I knew it, I was standing on the top landing. The small hallway was dark, and so was the bathroom. I stood there on the landing, tilting my head in the front of the doorway. The only part of my body entering the bathroom was a tiny hand to flip on the light switch as I stepped up the last stair into the hallway. The lights were horrible fluorescent tube lights, and they flickered moments before coming all the way on. As I flipped the switch, the lights dimly turned on, flickering. At that moment in the dim light, I saw it. The devil was sitting on the rim of the bathtub. It was what you would almost picture in your mind as a stereotypical looking devil. It was red, had horns and a tail. It sat there at the rim of the bathtub, motionless, silent, and we locked eyes for what seemed like an eternity. I was petrified, and I physically couldn't move. The lights seemed to stay flickering a lot longer than what they normally would. Finally, when the lights came all the way on, and fully illuminated the bathroom, the devil was gone. I must have ran back down the stairs right after that, but I was so scared. I don't remember. My sister says she remembers me running downstairs yelling, "The devil is in the bathroom." She said she remembers running upstairs to the bathroom and moving the shower curtain to see if anyone was in the bathtub. The next thing I remember was my mum walking into the house and me running into her, telling her the devil was in the bathroom. But she didn't take it seriously, so I ran outside to my dad. He picked me up and held me in his arms, and I told him that I saw the devil in the bathroom. I remember him saying to me, "I believe you." This was the first paranormal experience that I had that I can remember. It was several years before I had my next experience with the paranormal. Interesting little story. Strange though, it's not every day the devil decides to turn up and have a bath at your place, so... I mean, hell's hot, it's probably fucking sweating like a bitch up there, or down there should I say. You gotta meet the devil and that's pretty fucking cool, right? The next story is titled Activity in a Psychiatric Hospital by Flowers Grow Back. I added this one purely because you can't go wrong with a psychiatric hospital, right? They're just the setup for any horror going. At one point earlier in my 20s, I worked as part of the behavioural staff within an inpatient psychiatric hospital, providing both acute and residential care to children and teenagers. It was a fairly new hospital, only a couple of decades old, and had never served as anything but a psychiatric facility. For years, it also housed both adult acute and adult residential units. But about a year prior to my employment, the company shut down those units and moved the adults elsewhere. The experience that most stands out to me took place in a shut-down adult unit. Given the layout of the facility, the only way to medical offices or the little kid unit was to walk down this long, dark hallway that once housed a small portion of adults. The hall was extremely dark, cluttered by storage and some damaged wall decor. And all of the bedrooms were locked and empty. And after every cluster of bedrooms, there stood a set of steel double doors that could only be opened by scanning your badge. This was to lessen the chance of any flight risk or client truly going wrong. It was early on in my time there, and I was on my way to the little kids unit to talk to their nurses station. After I'd buzzed through a couple of double doors in the abandoned adult wing, I came through another set and found a young, slight-built child staring at me from the end of the longer hall. Just before the last set of double doors that would finally open to the nurse's station, and brightly lit, a colourful children's day room, she startled me. But when I saw her, I knew she probably wasn't a rogue patient. It makes no sense to you, but not wanting to catch the mental chaos that comes with a psychiatric hospital, I chalked it up to the spooky unit and asked her where the adults were. If they knew she wasn't in the day room, she quickly turned to her left, laughed and ran into her bedroom. I approached the room and, as I said earlier, it was locked, just like the rest of them. That solidified in my mind what was going on. But before I could leave the unit with a face that read "Eek, poltergeist," I had to make triple sure that she wasn't in there. I opened it and just as I suspected, there was no one. No furniture, no storage and no child. Just an empty room. I check, it's a bathroom. Nobody. I switched channels on my handheld. This is Flowers Grow Back. I think I saw a little girl, curly hair, on the 600 unit. New client maybe, she isn't familiar. I haven't been able to find her again. Are all the kids accounted for down here? Immediately, the nurses from the closest station and two male co-workers were scouring the unit. All of the children were exactly where they needed to be. But if there was a random child in the building, she needed to be found. And after a long while, the search was abandoned and I became the new client. Funny, right? One of the nurses who had been there for over a decade pulled me to the side. I was expecting a lecture. I was embarrassed to have rang a false alarm. But instead she explained to me that no one had died in the hospital. That eventually every female employee would run into a little girl with curly hair. She could be seen anywhere in the hospital and seemed to giggle and run off like she's playing with you. She's seen more than once and was a little confused as to why the girl would be there, but basically the nurse understood that I wasn't insane. Once word had got around that I had seen the little girl, some of the other staff that had been there longer started putting me to the side and whispering to me their belief in my story and sharing with me their own. Outside of the little girl, it wasn't unusual to hear or feel some leftover residual energy. Someone small and invisible pulling on your pants leg, little footsteps running down the hall at full speed. You turn around, hear the running get closer, but you're the only one down the hallway. Laughter, squealing, tiny voices in empty playrooms, and the vacant cafeteria. I once heard balls bouncing in the gym in the middle of the night. Thinking there must be staff playing therapeutic basketball with an upset teenager, I opened the door and it was just pitch black, but I could still hear the balls. Don't make a joke. I turned on the light and it all went silent. No one has died there. Now, that doesn't mean none of the clients have died anyway, away from the hospital. Unfortunately, so that's maybe something. A lot of kids, adults, teenagers who came to the hospital know it is the only safe place in the entire world. Sometimes when they were scared, they'd even walk to the hospital on their own, in the rain or at night, whenever their home was just too much. I'm sure there's a lot of residual energy. It's highly chaotic. Lots of violence, self-injury, the list goes on. That was quite nice, actually. I mean, obviously, you saw a ghost. That's it. I mean, a ghost is not always a negative thing, but you saw something. It was interesting. A lot of people there had experienced it, but the fact that this psychiatric hospital was actually helping people. Psychiatric hospitals really do get a bad rep, and I mean, I blame Hollywood for that partly because, you know, abandoned asylum, ooh, spooky. But it sounded like this place was a good place, so I appreciate that. But yeah, it really was an interesting experience. Any kind of hospital, I believe I've probably mentioned this before, holds a lot of energy where it could be the beginning of someone's life or the end of someone's life, and I believe that's when our energy is the strongest. So, yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. Interesting story. So let's move on with the next story, shall we? The next story is a female spirit guardian. No, I could really do with a spirit guardian. Now, this is posted by All for Laughter. I hope this is a fun story and it makes me laugh. I'm very doubtful. To be honest, I'm not sure if she's my spirit guardian, or if that's even a real word for it. I don't know who she is at all, or why she's been with me for so long. I only know that she's a positive force, and I'll do almost anything with my hair to be the same auburn as hers. Fun fact, I dyed my hair auburn once, and it was not good. I had really dark hair, and it just made like a auburn orange halo around my roots. Fuck, it was tragic. I grew up in an actively haunted house. It seemed like daily there was whispering, singing, touching, footsteps, opening cabinet doors, just about anything else you could imagine. I had a lot of friends who I'm still lucky enough to be close with as an adult. And even though they were all horrified of my house, they still liked to laugh and shudder and get chill bumps while they were sharing ghostly memories with me. The woman was there with me. As silly as it sounds, I'm not sure if she lived and died or if she ever lived at all, but she was one of those constant beings in the house. As a child and teenager, I would see feet walk across the room from wall to wall or hear her lightly stepping down my hallway. Occasionally, she had shown herself to me for very, very quick instances, but as an adult, that stopped entirely. She's been with me everywhere I've ever lived. I know it's her when I see the blue-tinted lights. They look similar and smaller than most light orbs and slowly twinkle and turn their way across the room, or sometimes they stay in the same spot, near to me, for a very long time, and I see lights every few minutes. I think the most remarkable thing she's done is wake me up once. When I was younger, before I could be trusted to make it anywhere on time, she would shake my mattress until I woke up. It was inevitable. If I hit snooze too many times, it didn't matter. If I was wide awake or not, and I often was, someone, her, would place their hands right next to me on the bed and shake. One day, wide awake, I allowed her to do this for quite a while. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Finally, I said thank you. But my appointment was cancelled, and I'd just like to sleep in. It didn't happen again for another hour. Sometimes it still happens, just less often. I mean, shit. I wake up early anyway, so thank fuck that doesn't happen, but I can't imagine being woken up by being shook in bed. That is not the one. She even woke me up the night my dog died. My dog's name was Ginger, and she was 20 years old. Dude, the dogs live for 20 years. That seems really old. I'd fallen asleep on the recliner of my living room. Around 2 a.m, a gust of wind, another one of her unusual showcases, blew through the living room, long enough to wake me up and startle me. She then whispered in my ear. The door to the room where my dog had slept opened, and I was able to be with her during her final night. It all sounds incredibly far-fetched when I write it down like this. It may even make some people question my own sanity. Even I'm questioning it right now, but I know what I've seen and heard. Who do you guys think she is? To kind of break this down a bit, does it matter who she is? She's obviously someone, an individual, a spirit, an energy attached to you who only wants good things for you and has looked out for you, so I wouldn't look into it too much. It's obviously an incredibly positive thing and you're aware of it, but it's nice. It's a nice story. The entity, whatever you want to call it, definitely wants to make contact with you. It's been there around you all your life. It's probably still there, but the adult mind does brush things aside and leaves things to reason. You know how it does. So, yeah, very interesting story. I like that. We have a lot of stories to get through. This one is called Schizophrenia or Incubus. Strange mix. This one is by Forbidden Rose. I am 18 years old and I have an incubus, or at least I believe I do, and I do not know what to do. His name is Ryder. He has been with me ever since a young age. Back then, he was trying to hurt or kill me by sitting on my chest until I couldn't breathe. In a way, I had to fight him. For a while, he disappeared until I was 16. That's when everything changed. I started to take an interest in guys, but it's like every time I found an interest in someone, they were either taken or just not interested. I have heard that incubi can push away the competition, so to speak. I kind of felt like that was what was happening to me, and I hated it. That's it. Guys, girls, you ever get rejected, it's a fucking succubus or incubus. It's not you, it's not the fact that you don't wash. Succubus, man, that's it. I started feeling him touch me in various places. I saw many scratches on my fingertips, and my energy felt like it had been drained, and I had possible out-of-body experiences. Whenever he was around, he would knock. Or when I was sad, he would come around and touch me. In a sense, I feel like I developed my own case of Stockholm Syndrome. I didn't know what to do, and I couldn't make Ryder leave. Every day from the sun up to sundown, he would touch me sexually. I loved Ryder ever so much, but I let my religion come between us. And then it was nothing but a war to get him to leave me alone. But he is not. When I started telling people about him, they either said I had a mild form of schizophrenia, and that didn't make the situation better, or that I need to do a ritual. Even one of my best guy friends said I have schizophrenia. He said that mostly because he doesn't believe in magic. He's a logical kind of guy, but what if he is right? Actually, there were certain times when it did seem like it was in my head. There were small clues. I had spells cast to make him go away, and I prayed to angels to help get rid of my schizophrenia, and it worked for a while. However, Ryder still came back. So, which one is it? I really hope this is all in my head. I would rather be crazy than have a legit demon hurting me every day of my life. He doesn't seem like he wants to hurt me. However, I have seen him get angry, so I'm not willing to take that chance. Not if I don't have to. To be honest, I'm scared of him if he is real. In my upbringing, demons are not to be trusted and are to be cursed by uttering the name of Jesus. I have treated him poorly by ignoring him and basically starving him of my energy, but Ryder still won't leave. In the end, the romance won't bind me from the truth. The whole thing is not healthy for me or him. At least if the problems were in my mentality, they could be fixed. But if this is an actual demon, then that's not good. I can't just live with someone that could potentially hurt me. What's worst of all is I've asked fellow Christian people what I should do, and they've told me to go to a hospital and get help. So what do you guys think? Am I crazy, or do I have an unauthorized visitor? Oh, and just for the record, when we have held conversations mentally, he has brought other incubi into my house, which sucked. However, I did manage to make him to tell them to leave. Any advice is welcome, and you guys are free to comment, but no hurtful saying. So, the paranormal constantly has ties with mental health, mental well-being, and mental illnesses, all kinds of things like that. Partly because it's a science we don't understand, but we have a little slight knowledge of mental illness. So it's very easy to chalk things up to mental illnesses. Sometimes it's just not that. People, medical professionals, scientists, whatever, need to kind of be open that sometimes things aren't always just natural. Sometimes people hear things, people experiencing things. It's not because they're crazy, it's because something's reaching out, something's stuck behind, and it wants to speak with you. I thought the whole... Oh, it did touch you sexually. I was about to say, I thought the whole incubi thing was they want to kind of get down your pants. This next story is called The Man of Shadows, and it's by Hanny B. Coming out of the glorious state of Sweet Home, Alabama. My name is Hanny, and I've been experiencing things for all of my 20 years. I'm considered, I guess, as sensitive of some kind, so I can very easily feel, hear, and see spirits, and they can feed off my energy no matter where I am. Now that's over with, I can finally start with the man penned with the name Shadow. Like in my introduction, I've always been able to see spirits, and Shadow started when I was a small child, and after I left home in the Carolinas and moved to Alabama with my mother. I developed a deathly fear of the dark after seeing one too many things in it. This is insignificant now, but skip forward a few years until I'm 8 years old. Back when I was 8, I slept against a plastic window that looked into our living room, and I just so happened can see the bathroom hallway. This night my mum was asleep in her room and my stepfather was at work, so no adult, let alone a man, was even up. I was playing a Game Boy game, and something told me in my head to look out of the window. And like the child I was, I obeyed. What I saw was a very tall, black shadow of a man going into the very much lit up bathroom. Nothing else happened that night, but I was too scared to leave my bed. After this incident, I started to have night terrors multiple times. When these things attacked, it seemed I was semi-conscious, able to wake myself up, but I couldn't stay awake. I'd fall back asleep within a few seconds, and the dream would just continue. This all would happen within the span of 10 to 30 minutes, and afterwards I'd fully wake up, and then be too paranoid to get back to sleep. Beyond the night terrors, nothing significant happened, other than hearing my name being called, and my things getting moved around. These stopped when I was around 13 or 14. Activity lulled in my life regarding the spirits, only getting the occasional feeling that they were there, or hearing my name being called on multiple occasions. It wasn't until this past year I started to question it. Activity has picked up dramatically, and it seems I've started to develop a relationship with the spirits inhabiting my home. My attention is still drawn in by Shadow. Multiple times I've witnessed him standing above me when I awake in the middle of the night, or when he's standing in my parents' doorway at night. He seems to always be there. Even my own mother has felt him sit on her bed, or watch her from their bathroom doorway. My most recent thing, though, that almost made me freak out was the fact that a few nights ago I was laying in bed, trying to sleep, when all of a sudden I heard this rough, almost scratchy male voice whisper, "Hello," into my ear. I tried rationalising it, but alas, that did not help. I felt a presence in my room until I eventually passed out. What I want to know is everyone's take on here is, do you think that a man has just been attached to me? Do you think that maybe this may not be a spirit and maybe something like a poltergeist or something along those lines? Or am I just going insane thinking about this stuff? I certainly don't want him gone since he hasn't hurt me yet, and I don't think he will. So I'm just here to get opinions and perhaps take people's thoughts on what's going on. I mean, that's... There's definitely some kind of attachment to you, but... yeah, you did say your mum has experienced it. So I was going to say, if it's just you, I'd say unlikely. But the fact your mum has experienced it, maybe set up, I don't know, to get proof. Like, Record it, see if you can capture some EVPs, and maybe get a camera in your bedroom, or motion detectors, or anything like that to kind of justify what is happening to you. Oh, hold up, there's she's posted an update. Update time. Well, it's been a long while since I've been here, and things have certainly picked up. Now, I'm not sure if it's because Halloween is soon, but the spirits have become more and more restless, I think. For the last few weeks, my mother and I have been kept hearing voices speak to us almost every single day. Recently, I've seen a new spirit, a white figure, and I feel like it was a woman, that was standing near my door when I woke up a few nights ago. On top of that, I keep hearing things hit my roof, though it could just be pine cones dropping off the trees, and stuff hitting the side of the house my room is on. My mother has even heard, while I was out at class, loud banging and things moving around the room. Now, I'm not sure, but I almost feel like my recent research into the occult or atheist satanic rituals, in only curious research, nothing practicing or anything, could be attracting these things. I'm not sure if that happens though. Now that is something I definitely believe in. When you start looking into these kind of paranormal events and obscure occult things, you know, and the good shit, it attracts it. It's like magnetism. Ouch, I just headbutted my mic. It definitely is like magnetism, and there's certain things you can do. It's, yeah, honestly, you're not imagining it. That's a real thing. Like when I was going in hard on like the podcast, I was doing the TikToks, I was researching daily, I was recording all the time, and I picked up that audio of that kid laughing, and then flicking the back of my hair while I was editing the podcast. It definitely manifested something, just talking about these things constantly. You're not crazy. It happens. It's no fun, but it happens. This one is called Skull Scare by Cornflower. This took place in the mid-80s, when I was 11 or 12. My mum was an art teacher back then, and my best friend's mum was an artist, so there were a lot of artsy things floating around the two households. Cracked pottery, sculptures, fancy drapes, costume jewellery, you name it. You know what I just said about recording and things happening? I don't know if it will be picked up in this audio, but the door just creaked open. Fucking hell. So that's fun. But the one thing that took the cake was a real human skull that my friend's mum used as a sketching model. How she came to own it is unclear to me, but I do know that it wasn't a deceased family member. The first incident took place on an extremely cold evening in January. My friend invited several of us over to hang out at her place. The reason I mention the cold is because she had dark thermal drapes in her room. The drapes kept out the chill, but they also blocked out the streetlights, headlights, and whatever natural light was left from that day. We decided not to turn on the inside lights and lit a couple of candles instead. After playing a few rounds of cards, one of us had the bright idea we should try to summon spirits. Now that's never a bright idea, is it? We had no idea what we were doing, but we wanted to make it a glamorous affair by decorating my friend's dresser with offerings. Wow, you kind of brought this on yourself. The dresser had a huge trifold mirror on top. We draped some sparkly necklaces and scarves around the mirror, put some jewellery boxes in front of it, set the candles in front of the mirror, spread out our deck of cards and, you guessed it, placed the human skull in the middle of the arrangement. Then we huddled on my friend's bed and waited. None of us knew how to summon spirits, so we all just sat there waiting for something to happen. I had some misgivings about the skull, but went along with the scheme thinking it was harmless enough. Since I was a little scared, I didn't look at the dresser but focused my attention on the dark corner shielded from all the light, and the huge old-fashioned wardrobe. The corner was very dark. Suddenly a faint circular light appeared there and started to grow. Strangely enough, it did not scare me. I just sat there and watched it get bigger. It felt like a long time, but I doubt that it lasted longer than a few seconds. Suddenly, the bedroom door flew open and my friend's 3-year-old daughter burst in, banging pot lids together and offering to fry us an egg. just what you want in the middle of a summoning. Fucking toddlers, man, they're just crazy. They're adults on crack. The light disappeared from the hallway and poured into the dark bedroom, and the faint circle of light disappeared once more. I asked my friends later if any of them saw anything. They said they didn't, but they were all looking at the dresser and at the mirror. I was the only one too scared to look at our centerpiece. I tried to convince myself afterwards that what I was seeing was perfectly natural. Perhaps it was a ray of light that preceded the opening of the bedroom door. I argued, unfortunately, no explanation seemed to completely adequate. Light from the door would have started as a linear streak, not a circle. Maybe darkness messed with my vision, but then again, perhaps we were saved from a massive scare, or worse, by a 3-year-old chef. Yeah, count your lucky stars, that kid was there. Who knows what could have happened? That could have been a possession or attachment, who God knows. The following fall, my mum borrowed the skull for sketching. For a few weeks, it sat in the middle of our fancy dining room table. As I didn't have to see the skull at night, I wasn't particularly scared of it, but generally preferred to steer clear anyway. Several weeks into the skull's temporary residency, my mum called me in the dining room and asked me to bring a duffel bag. She seemed very concerned about something. When I arrived with the bag, she loaded the skull into the bag and told me not to touch the skull, and asked me to take it back to my friend's house as soon as possible. I was really spooked at this point and ran rather quickly to my friend's place. When I got back, my mum breathed a sigh of relief and told me she thought the skull had really bad energy. A few weeks later, she was explaining that after she brought the skull home, all kinds of little things started going wrong. Nothing really serious, just annoying little things. She refused to elaborate, but said as soon as the skull left, everything just went back to normal. Now that would do it, I mean, yeah. It's just bizarre that you can have a human skull, right? Now, yeah, this is an actual human skull. That was a part of someone. So it wouldn't surprise me if something was attached to it. I mean, who knows? Yeah, you don't know the person. It could have been anything. No one knows. But still, interesting story. The fact that your mum's friend owned a human skull. That's pretty cool. Creepy as fuck. I wouldn't personally have that in my house, but I'm just skeptical about things like that. And if any kind of pre-owned shit, or you get stuff from like yard sales, I'm like, that shit's got an attachment. You don't want that. Alright. Next is What Happened on Alabama Highway 36 by MK. God, I thought it was going to be like MK Ultra, and I was like, whoa, we're about to get in a whole different conspiracy right about now. This story took place in the summer of 1996 on rural Highway 36 near Lacey Spring, Alabama, which is a small community based between Huntsville and Hartselle. I was living in Birmingham, Alabama at the time, and my girlfriend then, now my wife, was with me for this experience. I am a professional musician, and I'd come up to Huntsville, Alabama for a gig. I had a local music hall just outside of the downtown area of the city. After my show, I packed up to leave, got paid, and we were on our way back to Birmingham. It was approximately 2 a.m. when we were leaving Huntsville, and some inclement weather was beginning to form out to the west of the city. So my girlfriend and I opted for a shortcut route towards our destination, possibly to avoid the approaching storm. We stopped once at a gas station in the main thoroughfare, Highway 231, also known as Memorial Parkway, to get a bottle of water and some snacks for our hour-and-a-half drive back to Birmingham. While in the store, a friendly clerk offered information that a tornado had been reported due west of Huntsville, and that would do well to keep the radio tuned to a local weather station if we were continuing down the road. The entire North Alabama area is considered a year-round tornado alley, so while we're always cognizant of the weather, we simply monitor conditions and go about our life. That's scary. Imagine that. Like, here, England's weather is bizarre. We don't have a weather system anymore, but imagine the threat of a tornado. Shit, I'd love to go storm chasing. We continued out of Huntsville on Highway 231, crossed the Tennessee River and entered the tiny community of Lacey Spring, Alabama. The skies looked ominous, and we took the right turn to Highway 36, which would eventually cross Interstate 65, leading us back to Birmingham. Alabama Highway 36 is a rural, two-lane... Rural? Alabama Highway 36 is a rural... Right, I really like how rural is said. My brother-in-law, I guess, I mean, we're not married, but my girlfriend's brother is going out with someone from Alabama, and she said rural once in a conversation, and it blew my mind. So it's like rural. Like, it's not even a word, just, oh yeah, I live in this really rural. What the fuck? But I love it. Through several extremely tiny communities, there is only one traffic light on the entire 36-mile stretch, and save for a handful of houses and small businesses located along the road. So at night the area is nearly pitch black, desolate and seemingly deserted. Even during the daylight hours, traffic on Highway 36 is very light. Usually one would occasionally see a sheriff's patrol car, dump truck or a small trailer with bales of hay. On this particular night, however, my girlfriend and I got the scare of our lives as we turned west on Highway 36. It was approximately 2:30 a.m. Small hail had begun to fall. Another creepy sound in the background. Small hail had begun to fall and the winds were picking up. Thus far, the road was absolutely deserted with no light anywhere. The radio reported a possible tornado was just west of the city of Huntsville, which was about 25 minutes north of our location. What we saw on our drive in the next 30 minutes will haunt us for the rest of our days. We'd driven west on Highway 36 approximately 3 to 5 miles when the hail turned to light rain. And as we came to a bend in the road, we saw headlights, but something didn't look right. The headlights we saw were not a horizontal array, but a vertical one, and they had obviously been set on bright, what you might use in inclement weather. The vehicle was facing east. We had approached the headlights carefully, and as I slowed the car to a crawl and lowered my window, my girlfriend and I saw the headlights from a brand new, bright red, which was lying on the passenger side at the edge of the road. Interior lights on and engine still running, and the driver's side door was inexplicably open. I stopped my car and yelled out, "Is anybody in there? Are you hurt? Can you hear me? Do you need assistance? Does anyone need help?" I got no response at all. The inexplicable thing was this red SUV looked brand new. There were no marks or any evidence the car had been in any sort of accident or picked up by the high winds of the tornado. Since our area of North Alabama is threatened by tornadoes all year round, I've seen literally hundreds of vehicles that have been flipped, rolled or destroyed by the deadly force of a tornado. Vehicles anywhere close to tornadoes are always covered in silt debris, and usually many of their windows are blown out. The red SUV we saw was absolutely pristine. It looked as if it had been simply lifted by a giant hand and was gently set on its side. My girlfriend and I decided to continue on, hoping to flag down a sheriff's deputy if we happened to pass one. We didn't own cell phones yet. Just a couple of miles down from Highway 36, we spotted the lights of yet another vehicle, stopped near the road ahead. As we got closer, we saw the particular vehicle was a green SUV upside down in a shallow roadside ditch, engine running, all lights on, the driver's side door open, and no one around the vehicle. Creeped out but still concerned, I lowered my girlfriend. That's it, lower the girlfriend's window, so whatever's there gets her first, and you just put the pedal to the metal. And I yelled for anyone who might need help. Again, no response whatsoever. There was no evidence that the tornado had passed through this area. There were no limbs down, no signs of debris, or no trees bent or snapped. It was a little rainy, but what happened next is one of the scariest things I had ever seen. We continued west on Highway 36, and it was nearly 3 a.m. We rounded another wooded bend that opened into a clearing on both sides of the road. And already a little freaked out, I noticed the road seemed to be moving. I slowed, and as we got closer, my girlfriend and I saw the road, the shoulder, the ditches, everything was covered in small frogs, hopping in different directions. Fuck. And I don't mean there was a couple of 100 frogs in the road. There were thousands upon thousands of frogs. They covered every inch of the road and shoulder as far as we could see. Now we were really scared, totally freaked out. Whatever we'd driven into, my girlfriend and I decided we should get the hell out of there right then. The insane thing was that we kept driving, running over the frogs. That's harsh. Man, I was enjoying this story, and then you start running over frogs. Have you ever heard a frog scream? Like, I work outside. I do a lot of landscaping work. We come across frogs, I always pick them up and save them. But sometimes, this one time, I picked up a frog and it was like, ee! Fucking screamed, right? And I didn't know this was a thing. And yeah, apparently, frog scream. YouTube it. It's really interesting. We estimated that we drove around 3 more miles before we could see any more frogs. They were literally everywhere. The road and shoulders were inundated with small, hopping, living frogs everywhere that you looked. We saw no further cars on the road and we had to make the turn off towards Birmingham. By the time we reached the junction of Alabama Highway 36 and Interstate 65, we stopped at an all-night gas station to hop out and shake our heads. We simply couldn't believe what we had seen. 2 different SUVs, one on its side and one flipped on its roof, but with no damage, engine running, lights on, with the owners nowhere to be found. And then a plague of small frogs covering every square inch of rural highway for 3 or more miles. Neither I nor my girlfriend had drunk alcohol nor had any interest in mind-altering narcotics of any sort. None of us are prone to hallucinations. We are both super alert, highly educated Christian people with no known history of psychotic behaviours. The next morning we found no tornado or high winds had been spotted, reported or recorded anywhere in the immediate vicinity of our sighting. Seeing that we are extremely weather aware, I immediately began to research into the incident with the frogs. Our area has a very high concentration of professional people educated on weather, science and psychology. I consulted with meteorologists, engineers, scientists and a psychiatrist, and even a couple of people known to be lightning rods for paranormal activity. The scientists all agreed the frogs do have a mating season, where they make the exodus from their environment to begin the mating process. But since there was no large enough freshwater bodies nearby, and the sheer number of frogs we witnessed could not be explained by animal biology, the meteorologists all agreed that during certain weather events such as a tornado or waterspout, it's highly likely that marine-dwelling animals, like frogs, could be sucked out of their watery habitat by a vortex of winds, but they were likely to be blown quite high into the air and would eventually fall back to the ground, usually encased in hail, and very few, if any, animals would survive a fall from the height of, say, 20 feet. Also, a waterspout tornado would not simply just pick up frogs, it would pick up fish, birds and water-dwelling vegetation. None of those were present. Therefore, if the frogs that my girlfriend and I witnessed had been sucked up by a storm before and been deposited in the road in front of us, it is highly unlikely that many of them would still be alive. Furthermore, the scientists and meteorologists all agreed that the number of frogs we saw in a large area populated by such small bodies of water, a couple of small lakes and creeks. As for the wrecked but intact SUVs, area police and sheriffs had no reports of vehicle accidents in the area for that date, time, per my research. The 2 baffled people with experience in paranormal activity, to whom I consulted, were equally baffled. Finally, I have quite a few experiences which I consider to be paranormal in nature, but no other experiences like this. The wrecked cars are one thing, the plague of hopping living frogs in every direction for 3 miles on Alabama State Highway 36 is another. All I hope is for some sort of explanation. This event from 20 years ago did not cause me any fear or anxiety, just very scary, unexplained rational thought and professional sciences. Now that is an extremely scary story. I was so invested in that story. Until you ran over, you caused a mass frog genocide. And I'm not about that, man. I like frogs. Don't be doing that. I'd back up, go the other way. I mean, if you see a road full of frogs, it's pretty freaky anyway, so I'd just back up, go find somewhere to stay the night, carry on the road in the morning, you're with your girl, stay in the car, share some body heat, make a little love, get down tonight. Nah, but seriously though, it's a very interesting story. I liked it. It's almost sounds made up, but I'm willing to believe anything, so props to you, dude. That sounds horrific. But it is about time to wrap things up, so I hope you have enjoyed this episode. We will be continuing this with, we will be continuing this. I'm trying to think of the next state. Where are we? So Alabama, I'm trying to think of states. Arizona, Arkansas, no, not Arkansas, Arkansas. How the fuck is that Arkansas? That's Arkansas. It's Kansas with an AR in front of it. What the fuck? Alabama. No, fuck. I'm googling. Alaska. That's where we're going next. We're going to Alaska, so let's fucking do this. I really do hope you have enjoyed this episode. I'm glad to whoever listens. I'm glad about whoever listens to this, because I have really missed enjoying the show. I've had a lot of shit going on in my personal life, which is just, it took over for a while. I've been trying to deal with that and have therapy and mask some unwanted things going on in my life, but I'm in a good place. I want to start recording. I want to start doing this all again, and I can't thank you guys all enough. This is free therapy for me, just chatting out there to you. So we're getting fucking soppy now, but honestly, it is great. And like I said, if you could leave a review, we're going to get back into this hard. So if you could leave a review, that will be absolutely fantastic. And it would mean the world to me. And I will credit you in the next episode. So yeah, it's been so long. I don't know what the fuck else to say. Actually, I know what you guys are waiting. I was just going to long it out for you a bit. But stay safe, stay spooky, and good night.